Right now, we are going to session 1. The topic is Global Outlook and Policy Review on Reducing FLW. Now, we would like to welcome this topic chairman, Dr. Shu Shenzhang, lead chapter ATCWG APEC. Please.
Okay. Distinguished delegates and ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to chair the first session. In this session, we have two keynote speakers, very outstanding one. The first one is Dr. Maximo Torero Cullen. Dr. Torero is the chief economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. He joined the organization in January 2019 as Assistant Director General of the Economic and Social Development. Before joining FAO, he was the World Bank Group Executive Director for Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay since November 2016. And he also has been worked many years for IFPRI. And his major area is in the analyzing poverty, inequality, importance of geography and assets, in explaining poverty, and in policy oriented towards poverty alleviation. He received a PhD in economics from the University of California, Los Angeles. Because the unavailability for him to join on site, so he have a pre-recorded message. So now, please play the video.
Good morning. My name is Maximo Torero Cullen. I am the Chief Economist of FAO, and it's a pleasure for me to be with you today. The idea of today is to do a presentation of the global food loss and waste reduction and giving a global outlook of what is happening. Let me put things in context to start this presentation. As part of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, there is a goal SDG 12, which creates a global commitment to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. SDG target 12.3 calls for halving per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels by 2030, as well as reducing food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. It doesn't put on a specific number target, but it talks about reduction of food loss and, of course, 50% of waste. FAO in 2019 published definitions for food loss and waste so that we can standardize the way we look at it and therefore the way we quantify it. Food loss is therefore a decrease in the quantity or quality of food resulting from decisions and actions by food suppliers in the chain, excluding retail, food service providers, and consumers. Food loss predominates from harvest prior to the retail. Food waste is defined as the decrease in the quantity or quality of food resulting from decisions and actions by retailers, food services, and consumers. So it goes from the retail to the consumer. Food waste predominates in households, in food services, and in retail. Food loss and food waste are monitored using two separate indicators. The Food Loss Index, FLI, of SDG 12.3.1, that focuses on losses that occur from production up to and not including the retail level, and the Food Waste Index, FWI, which is indicator 12.3.1.b, which looks into food waste that occurs in retail up to the consumer level. FAO is the custodian of the indicator on food loss, the Food Loss Index, and the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, is the custodian of the Food Waste Index. Currently, very few countries are measuring food losses at the national scale. Efforts are being put in place to increase measurement and report on food losses in countries. FAO produces model estimates of SDG monitoring to fulfill its custodian mandate. We are, however, working to progressively replace model food loss estimates with officially reported country-level data. Now, according to FAO estimates, the percentage of food loss globally after harvest on farm during the transport, the storage, wholesale, and the processing level was estimated at 13.23% in 2021, where you see the blue arrow in the last bar in this graph. The equivalent of approximately 1.25 billion tons of food produced globally. Imagine, we're losing 1.25 billion tons of food produced globally. No significant changes in food loss percentages have been recorded since the beginning of the Agenda 2030. As you can see, the food loss percentage in 2016 was 13%, the red arrow, and minor changes in the estimates do not identify any clear structural change in losses along the supply chain, despite, as we will see later, we have seen hunger increasing over time. These graphs show estimates of food loss percentages by region in 2016 and 2021. Looking at the green bars that relate to 2021, our most recent estimate, we see that at the regional level, the sub-Saharan Africa has the highest level of loss, approximately 20%. This is followed by Oceania with 14.8%. Latin America and the Caribbean also register a high level of food loss at 14.5%, which is a 2.3% increase since 2020, occurring in the Caribbean subregion, where the food loss percentage exceeds 22%. The lowest level of food loss are recorded in Central Asia and Southern Asia, and in North America and Europe at 12.6 percentage points and 9.9 percentage points, respectively. According to the estimates of the United Nations Environmental Programme, or UNEP, globally, an estimated of 19% of food, equivalent of 1.15 billion tons of food, was wasted in households for food services and retail in 2022. Households account for approximately 60% of the food that is wasted globally. Around the world, each day, over 1 billion meals are thrown away in households alone. So clearly, when we look at the waste part, which is retail to consumer, the major focus right now and the major concern is at the household level, not at necessarily the retail industry or the restaurants. That means that we have to put a lot of efforts on behavioral change and the way households use their food they purchase and they consume. But also the other thing that is important is that we bring together the more than 1 billion tons being lost every year, plus the 1 billion tons being waste. Then we are talking of more than 2 billion tons of food being wasted every year. And that's a significant amount in a world where we are seeing significant problems of undernourishment and hunger in the world. Now, why is so important reducing food loss and waste? First, approximately 28.9% of the global population, 2.33 billion people, were moderately or severe food insecure in 2023, as I was mentioned before. In 2023, 1 out of 11 people in the world face hunger. Furthermore, food loss and waste represent a waste of natural resources, water, land, soils, used in food production, as well as a waste in human resources, energy, inputs, fertilizers, seeds, use of production, and all activities downstream in the supply chain. Food loss and waste generate between 8 to 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and impact on climate change and environmental sustainability, and contribute to ecosystem biodiversity loss, posing a threat to food security. So we are facing this enormous inconsistency. More than 2 billion tons of food are lost or waste every year, but at the same time, we are facing significant numbers of hunger people that don't have access to healthy diets. 1 in 11 people face hunger. We are deteriorating our water, our soil use, our land quality, and we are also creating emissions that could be impacting climate change and could be contributing to the destruction of biodiversity. Furthermore, shocks such as economic and political crises, natural disasters such as floods, droughts, are putting pressure on food systems, threatening the security of food suppliers across the globe. So food security is a global priority that is dependent on a sustainable food system, agri-food system that can address growing demand amidst resource depletion. Here is where we need to start the process of change and the process of transformation. We also have a future demand challenge. The world population is currently at 8.2 billion and is expected to grow to 9.7 billion by 2050. Feeding current and future populations while leaving no one behind necessitates on focusing on maximizing the use of food production in a sustainable manner towards building resilience in our food systems. These actions are required globally and locally. And here is where we need to find ways in which we can reduce food loss and waste by increasing our efficiency and the way we produce and to bring innovations. That's the only solution that we have, and for sure, we know it will be a triple win. It will be an improvement of our food availability, affordability, and access. It will improve the way we use our natural resources, and it will reduce, of course, the emissions, which are so negative to our climate and environment. Embracing innovation and fostering circular economy approaches in the agri-food system to prevent, reduce, reuse, and repurpose of food that will potentially be lost and wasted is a key to enhance food system sustainability. System from the linear take, make, dispose modality of operations that are largely responsible for the high levels of food loss and waste in current agri-food systems, and which put pressure on the natural resource base while generating environmental impacts, will contribute to maximizing the use of food in a sustainable manner. Making this shift necessitates first and foremost prioritizing the prevention and reduction of food loss and food waste at source through proper handling, processing, packaging, and storage, and for greater attention to managing food waste in retail and consumption, particularly in households. Secondly, prioritizing the rescue, recovery, and redistribution of surplus, unsold, and marketable food that is safe and suitable for consumption is central. The third priority is that transforming byproducts and food residues through upcycling for consumption or for use as ingredients in other products, including food products. Upcycling means finding new, higher value preferable food uses for items that will otherwise not have gone to human consumption, towards enhancing the sustainability and resilience of our agri-food systems, and recycling of bioproducts and waste for use as a compost. But colleagues, to be able to achieve this, we need to better understand where the losses occur, where the waste occur, and what are the challenges that farmers are facing to be able to resolve and minimize those. Of course, the food loss index creates a macro number, an aggregate number at the global level, at the sub-regional level, that allow us to understand the bigger picture. But if we don't look at the detail of the value chains, and we don't look at what is happening in the value chains and where the bottlenecks are, we won't be able to achieve this important goal. Here is what FAO is trying to come up with: better information and better solutions. So we are trying to work in all the regions of the world to identify the underlying causes of food losses and context-appropriate solutions to help stem the problem upstream in the food supply chain. No one size fits all, and there has to be solutions that create benefits for the farmers too. We have developed digital apps, and the major app that we have launched is the FAO Food Loss app. And the FAO Food Loss app that you can observe in the top right-hand side here, which is publicly available today, has been designed exactly to achieve that. It has been designed to understand where losses occur across the value chain, to understand what are the causes of those losses, and what could be potential solutions to those problems. This is where we will match demand and supply, and that's where we will bring solutions that will help us to bring the innovation and all the three elements that I mentioned before of the bioeconomy concept exactly, which is basically to minimize losses. For the case of waste, we're also working in other options and other apps, OptiWaste, for example, which is helping us to minimize waste at the level of the consumer, especially on what we mean restaurants, retail industry, but also at the level of the school feeding programs. And we also are working intensively in behavioral change at the consumer level, because we know now that 60% of the waste is happening at that level. Efforts to optimize water use in post-harvest operations and to apply circularity principles on farm through composting are also widely practiced. Collective learning initiatives are being implemented using various forms of media, rural, radio, television, internet, to help sustain a good practice and innovations introduced. All of this is happening while we are increasingly confronted by challenges brought out by climate change. We know that climate change will accelerate certain pests and diseases and will bring, for example, insects that will damage, and also will bring heat stress, which result in high levels of losses in the horticultural crops, while plant and pests such as the fall armyworm, the ravage economically important crops are becoming more destructive, posing an increasing threat to food security and the environment in many developing countries. So we need to be prepared with innovative solutions to solve these problems, because we know for sure climate change and extreme events of weather will be happening. And for that, we need to bring solutions for farmers to minimize the losses that they are facing. With the rising global temperatures, the demand for cooling technologies to reduce food losses has continued to increase, with improvements in expansion of cold chain logistics. As you can see here, highlighted in red, this comes at the cost of environment, with the production of F-gases or fluorinated greenhouse gases, hydrofluorocarbons, that could exacerbate the current climate crisis. FAO data shows that 517% increase in F-gases from 2000 to 2022 that reflects accelerating expansion of these cold chains, particularly in the case of developing economies. So we need to figure out also a system approach, because we also want to minimize these externalities. And that's where we need to find a solution for that. Reducing food loss and waste can reduce climate change impact, but only if new cooling-related infrastructure is designed to make use of gases with low global warming potential, is energy efficient, and make use of clean sources of energy and low carbon transportation. We must think and act in the context of the whole system approach, making use of technologies that are energy efficient and climate friendly in order not to exacerbate the climate crisis when reducing food loss and waste. Sustainably cooling systems and cold chains can make an important difference in collective efforts to reduce food loss and waste. This is clearly an area where cross-food chain collaboration and partnerships can make a difference in ensuring the sustainability of food systems with minimal environmental impact. In this slide, you see an analysis of agri-food system emissions by component. I would like to focus attention on the blue columns that relates to the pre- and post-production emissions. As you can see, the contribution of emissions from pre- and post-production activities, the blue bars, show an increased trend during the period of 2000 to 2022. FAO's data indicate that the global contribution of emissions from pre- and post-production activities increased from 24% in 2000 to 33% in 2022. Looking at the yellow range arrows, we see that in 2022, packaging, transport, and retail accounted for the largest component of the agri-food system emissions, generating 1.6 CO2 equivalent from fossil fuel energy use. And this is what we need to minimize. When we look at emissions from packaging, the blue arrow, as compared to other activities in the food supply chain, we see that the combined emissions from processing, transport, and production far exceeds from food packaging. Food packaging is essential in reducing food loss and waste, and accordingly, reducing food packaging without increasing food loss and waste is critical. So we need to be very careful on how we handle these processes so that we minimize also the externalities. Lightweighting or the switch to lighter, more flexible packaging films helps too. We can reduce food waste, increasing product shelf life. We can lower material and energy consumption, thereby reducing the carbon footprint from transportation and improving transportation efficiency, as more material can be safely transported per shipment, and leading to improved cost saving. Some of these films are compact, are compostable, and biodegradable, avoiding landfill disposal, further benefiting the environment. Colleagues, smart packaging technologies, and particularly active and intelligent packaging, offer a promising approach to reducing food loss and waste in a sustainable manner. Smart packaging technologies also provide opportunities for improving the shelf life of perishables with the use of sensors that monitor parameters such as temperature, relative humidity, and freshness, reducing food spoilage and food waste and enabling improved inventory management. When integrated with real-time innovative monitoring technologies, Internet of Things, IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and sensors, smart packaging offers considerable potential for improving traceability and transparency, optimizing supply chain effectiveness, enabling inventory management, and optimizing packaging size towards facilitating portion control. It can also educate consumers by providing information on product storage and can promote the reuse and refill options, enabling circular economy initiatives and minimizing the overpackaging of food. Now, looking at the issue of food waste, households are responsible, as I mentioned before, of 60% of the wasted food. Consumer awareness, raising and reduction, and education to bring about behavioral change toward reducing food waste must be a continued area of focus. Smartphones and artificial intelligence power apps and platforms, as I mentioned in my last slide, are being increasingly used to reduce consumers on actions to prevent food waste. At FAO, we believe that reducing consumer-level food waste also requires the human touch, with integrated approach that promotes awareness, educate consumers, starting from a very young age, and promoting interventions that change wasteful behaviors through actions that bring about effective and sustainable reductions in food waste in households. One of the ways we are collaborating ourselves directly by doing ourselves at our own operations is in each headquarter office and in each of our regional offices, we'll have deployed a system of reduction of food waste in which consumers have to go and pre-sort their food that they are wasting so they understand how much proteins, how much calories, how much emissions, and how much micronutrients those foods are generating when they are thrown to trash, when they are wasted. This, we believe, could change the way we act and the way we behave also at home. And that will allow us also to keep tracking. The results of this process has been very successful in FAO, reducing substantially the food waste. The same we're doing at schools with our Opti Waste app, trying to teach kids how to reduce waste in schools of food, especially now that we have so many systems of school feeding programs that have been scaling up around the world. Similarly, in hotels, in resorts, in retail stores, we're trying to implement similar ways so that we can accelerate the process of changing behavior. Smartphone apps, as I mentioned before, will help this, and we need to bring as much as possible technologies so that we can accelerate this process and bring the benefits of reduction of waste. As was seen in the case of smart packaging, by leveraging the use of technological innovation, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, food rescue and redistribution, programs can better target towards addressing specific groups, such as the food insecure, where artificial intelligence optimizes the matching between food donors and recipients, while the blockchain provides transparent records of donation, contributions, and improving in reduction of emissions. Here is where the food banks can play a crucial role. But the success of a food bank is the minimum time in storage, so that we don't expend too much storage capacity, but we optimize the distribution. And that's where technology, blockchains, artificial intelligence can help us enormously to create this optimization process. We want to have in food what we see in the bigger traders, what we see in Amazon what we see in all these distribution mechanisms, which have been able to optimize location and distribution. That's what we need to bring. Clearly, the synergy between technological innovation and sustainable practices are emerging as a driver and a possible winner in the fight against food loss and waste from farm to fork. We, however, need to continue to monitor these developments to ensure that no one is left behind due to the digital divide. I would like to take us back to the Food Systems Summit in 2021 as a point of reference, following which FAO's Data Lab conducted an analysis of country pathways presented. Here we see a map that shows that the origins of the 129 national pathways submitted by countries. According to our Data Lab analytics, 90 of these countries included food loss and waste as a priority in their pathway documents. This is important because it tells us that governments realize the importance of reducing food loss and waste. This graph also shows the means of implementation of food loss and food waste reduction, identifying the pathways of these 90 countries. The top 5 means of implementation in concrete terms were policy and regulation, human resource capacities, innovation and knowledge, infrastructure, and public information. Looking at the prioritized issues in the context of all that I have outlined in my presentation, we have moved along the way in developing groundwork upstream in the food supply chains with the smallholders and downstream, particularly in the context of digitalization, partnerships, and integrated approaches to tackle the issues in a comprehensive way. 5 years ago, digitalization was not seen as a priority. As you can see, it was at the bottom of the chart. This is a good reason of being optimistic and a good reason to move forward. However, we cannot rest. We need to move forward and we need to accelerate impact. We now have better data collection. We have the food loss app. We have the OptiWaste app. All of this is helping us to understand where food losses occur, not only to have the global perspective, but also to understand at the value chain level, at the country level, where they occur so that we can really target interventions and bring innovation, technology to be able to accelerate the change. We need to promote cross-food chain collaboration, partnership network building, integrated approaches, and awareness raising in countries with various partners to effectively tackle food loss and waste reduction in a sustainable manner towards the bringing about transformative change in our food system. Additionally, we need to keep monitoring evidence from the emerging technological innovation that comprehensively drives the reduction of food loss and food waste from farm to fork. Here is where understanding where they occur and the challenges that farmers are facing, the challenges that consumer and retail industry are facing, will allow us to change the regulation or to adjust the regulation, will allow us to bring closer and the last mile of these technological innovations and to find solutions that will help us to assure. Food loss and waste reduction is a clear case of climate investment. It's a clear case where we can bring together the consumers, the producers, we can bring together the regulation of the governments, the financial institutions, because we know we have a triple win. We will improve access to food and availability of food in a world we have more than 700,000 people, 700 million people that are in hunger, in a world where 2.8 billion people don't have access to healthy diets. We will also improve our use of our environment because we will use our water more effectively, our soils, our land more effectively. And of course, it will reduce the impact that the agri-food system generates on climate by reduction of the 8 to 10% of emissions that food loss and waste generate to the world today. Investing in capacity development will be central. Investing in human capital will be central. But we need to move forward through science, through data, and through innovation. We need to move forward through institutional reforms to assure that we achieve the transformation that is needed to reduce food loss and waste. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this APEC conference. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Torrero, for a very insightful speech analyzing the global situation about the food loss and waste by sector, by continent, by area, and also identify the way the loss, for example, for the waste parts, the consumption side, particularly the household, may constitute 60%, which would need behavior change. And it also mentioned the packaging and the smart technology, how that can be applied in the food value chain to reduce that. And at the end, it gives some recommendations, how can we move forward, and the significance of the work on reducing food loss and waste, not only contribute food security, food safety, but also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and also can be good for the environment. So he encouraged us to continue work together and move forward on this issue. So thank Dr. Torero again. Our next speaker is Dana Gunders. Dana Gunders served as the president at REFED, the US-based nonprofit working to end food loss and waste by advancing data-driven solutions. Deemed the woman who helped start the waste-free movement by Consumer Reports, Dana Gunders is an expert who has dedicated her career to helping industry, policymakers, and consumers activate solutions to reduce food waste. And today, she's going to give us the REFED's work, how that can contribute to reduction of food waste. So because the time conflict, she cannot join us physically, but she would join online, right, Dana?
Yes,
okay.
hello.
Good night to you. I think it's very late in the US. So welcome. So go ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for inviting me to speak. One of these years I will make it in person, but it's nice to be back with you all again. I am Dana Gunders. I'm the president of REFED, as mentioned, and we do a lot of things but today I was asked to speak very specifically about public-private partnerships and private sector success. And so I'm really excited to tell you about some projects that we've been involved in here in the US with some of the big food companies. You can go to the next slide, please. REFED, we are entirely dedicated to reducing food loss and waste. Primarily, our work is in the US, though we maybe are tiptoeing to do more international work. And we focus in 4 areas. We provide data on the topic and insights. We try to bring more money and funding into the space, working with investors and foundations and public institutions. We bring together the many different players and people who are working on the topic. And we also have our business initiatives. And again, that's what I'll tell you a little bit more today about one of those, which is the private sector platforms that we've created. Next slide, please. I'm glad Maximo gave kind of the setting because I don't have too much introduction here, but I will tell you that in the US, there's almost $400 billion worth of food that is uneaten, and that's about 73 million tons. And we call it surplus food because we think of it as it's not waste until it's wasted. And so this is what is excess. It's what's not sold. It's what is not eaten on people's plates. And it's what is not eaten in people's homes. Next slide, please. To give you a sense of where it happens, households are the biggest cause of food going to waste. So we have about 35% going to waste in homes, and then farms, and consumer-facing businesses like restaurants, hotels, and grocery stores. They're about tied, and then of course manufacturing. But when we look at food business altogether, it's really 65% of the food is being lost or wasted in the supply chain itself. Next slide, please. So that's where our private sector work comes in. There's 2 different but related projects we've been a part of. The first you may have heard of, it's called the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment. You'll see it in this presentation as the PCFWC. And That has been around for 7 years now. It's a public-private partnership, and so it has actually 3 state governments on the West Coast, the states of California, Washington, and Oregon. It has 8 city governments, and you can see those listed there. And then it has some other partners, and REFED is one of those other partners. And those groups together worked together to invite food businesses to join, and I'll show you those in a moment. So that's the Pacific Coast Foodways Commitment. Now, we've felt that it was so successful on the West Coast, and many of the companies involved felt it was so successful on the West Coast that they chose that we have now built out a separate project that is national in scope. So that we call the U.S. Food Waste Pact, and it's across the whole country of the U.S. And it's much newer. It's only about 1.5 years old. And one of the big differences is that the government is actually not a partner in this. And so we call it a voluntary pact. And it's a private sector pact only, and we don't have the same government involvement in that one. Let's go to the next slide, please. So those are the 2, and you'll see me talking about both of them throughout the presentation. And as I mentioned, one really came from the other. So the Pacific Coast Project was founded in 2018, and in December we launched the U.S. Food Waste Pact. And you can go to the next slide. So the framework for both of these projects, when companies join the project, they commit to 3 things. They commit to having a target. Many of them have signed on to the UN Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, but some have their own. It may be a different time frame, it may be a different percentage, but they need to have some kind of target that they have set. The second is that they measure, and every company that is part of this project reports data to us at REFED on an annual basis of how much surplus food they have, and then where it's all going, how much they've donated, how much is going to animal feed, how much to composting, how much to landfill. And then the third commitment is to act, to do something. Now, this is a little bit less specific. So many of the companies join working groups that we have. We've also done many case studies as well, like pilot projects and written case studies about them. So the act part is really up to the company itself. Next slide, please. Here you can see some of the companies involved. We have some very big companies, including Walmart and Kroger and Amazon and Starbucks. And in fact, we have over 50% of the grocery store market participates in these projects. And the 3 biggest food service companies participate in it as well. And so we've got really great participation, and we have even more coming soon. And in fact, we just had our first hotel chain join. The Hilton chain of hotels has joined as of recently. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense, now this is just for the Food Waste Pact. We held 15 working group meetings. We published 7 case studies. We had meetings. So there's a lot of different kinds. The working groups work on things like dairy or maybe donation, or it might be policy. Whereas the sector summits, we have everyone from either the grocery stores or the food service companies. They get together and think about how they can work together. And we've had a bunch of different types of projects and lots of media as well. Next slide, please. Oh, you can keep going. So just to dive into, now the next slide is my favorite. Because as I mentioned, we've now been collecting data from the Pacific Coast Project for 5 years. So you can go to the next slide. The most recent data is from 2023. Sorry, if you go to the next slide, please. There you go. Thank you. And so we've been collecting data from 2019 all the way until 2023. And in that time, the grocery stores that were involved in the project on the West Coast, the Pacific Coast Project, decreased their unsold food by 30%. That is extremely exciting to us because that is prevention. When they have less unsold food to begin with, that means that they have prevented, they've improved their prevention by 30%. And that's really exciting. Now, of course, that was happening at the same time as the COVID-19 pandemic, food prices getting more expensive. So certainly there could have been other factors involved. And that is why when the data came out for 2023, I was very happy to see that the line was pretty much flat because it meant that it wasn't just a pandemic thing. In the US, we have seen food consumption go up quite a bit since 2023. We've actually seen food waste go up quite a bit in 2023. But these companies that are working on it, they kept it down. And I think that's a really important thing to point out is that there's something about their work that is really working. Next slide, please. To give you a sense of what that achieved in impact, so some of the good news is that they saved money. They saved, there was a 31% decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions of the food waste, with a footprint that is equivalent to driving 500,000 cars for a year, about. But one interesting impact here is that because they decreased their unsold food so much, the amount of food that was donated decreased also. Now the rate, they're donating more food. They're actually donating a higher percentage of their food. But because they prevented so much in the first place, they actually are donating less total tons by a little bit. So that was one implication. And then of course, water savings as well. You can go to the next slide, please. Now, this year is the first year that we have collected data from the national project. And so you can see here that the type of data we're collecting. And we can, for the first time, say that about 4.1%, that number in that upper box there, about 4.1% of food in grocery stores is not sold. And that is the number across the country. And we're really excited to have kind of real-time data to show that. And then you can see in this other chart where it's gone, and what percent is going to landfill, what percent is going to donation, etc. And we will collect the same data next year and the year after and hopefully be able to really track how these companies are doing. Next slide, please. Similarly, this is the first time we have data for the food service industry. And so, you can see there's less donated as a percent, but actually they're a little bit more efficient at using all of their food. So their rate is more like 2.75%. Next slide, please. So I think what I want to point out about all this is that for us, collecting data has been a really important part of the success of this. And one other thing I should mention is that, so all of these companies give us data. We collect it, we aggregate it into kind of a report that is public that shows some of the numbers I just showed you. But we also give each company a private report back that shows their data and it benchmarks it, it compares it to the industry's data. And it does that for each food category. So it does it for produce, it does it for meat, it does it for dairy, and they can see where they are about average or where they're maybe behind as compared to some of their peers. And that is probably the favorite part for the companies that participate. That's probably the number one value that we deliver to them is giving them that benchmark report back. So you can go to the next slide, please. And next, just to give you a sense of some of the projects that these working groups are doing. So we have one working group that is about food recovery or donation. We have another one that is about staff engagement, and that has been really successful. I will show you in a moment. And then the third one that has been really popular and the companies have liked a lot is the whole chain projects that we're doing. So I'll tell you a little bit more about those second two. If you can go to the next slide. So the whole chain projects, what we're doing is we are picking specific products. So we started with the first two we did were strawberries and potatoes. And we traced the whole supply chain and really created a map of where the food was getting lost with specific percentages. And so we could step back and look at it and say, oh, strawberries, 36% of strawberries in the US, and this is a real number, 36% of strawberries are never harvested. And that was the big hot spot for strawberries. And so now we're taking that information and we are understanding, well, what are those strawberries? And we have two of the food service companies that are part of this said, we'll try to use those strawberries. And so now we are piloting them using those strawberries to address that. And similarly with potatoes, they're trying to find ways to address some of the hot spots there. We have now started two more whole chain projects, one in meat and for ground beef and one in dairy with yogurt, because those are such high greenhouse gas footprint products. So we're excited about that. And then after that, we will do one on seafood, most likely shrimp. So it's been popular, and I think it speaks to, it's really important to get specific for some of these. We are hoping that we don't have to do every product, that we can learn from one product to another if they are similar types. But a lot of the waste is pretty specific to products, and I think that specificity is important. The second project, this employee engagement, is one where the companies have really learned from each other. We had a company named Bob's Bread Mill. They're a flour company, and they did a project where they educated employees and they held a contest for the employees in their manufacturing plant to submit ideas. And they got hundreds of ideas. The first one that they implemented saved 70% of the waste on that line. And the idea was to tighten a screw more often. And so it was very low cost. It was very simple. And no one would have thought of that in management. You really needed it to come from the employees. And it was so successful that we've had, I think, 3 or 4 more companies replicate that. And we went on to create a toolkit that all of the companies, any company really, because it's publicly available, can go and use the toolkit to do the same thing with their employees. If you go to the next slide, I think there's a photo of that. Oh, maybe not. You can find all of these. We've done many case studies, and we put them all online at the US Food Waste Pact. We've done the reports that capture the data and progress each year. And we have some other resources, and you can find those all at the US Food Waste Pact website. If you go to the next slide. There we go. You can also find the new employee engagement toolkit. And there are videos, there are like Excel file templates that you can use and all sorts of things. And you'll find many other resources as well. Go ahead to the next slide. So just to give you a quick sense of what is next for us, go ahead to the next slide. We will be collecting more data at the national level. We'll be doing it. It'll be our second year. And we may eventually, we hope to have other sectors. So we now have some of the fast food industry involved. We now have some hospitality. So we're hoping that over time we will be able to produce reports for more sectors. Next slide, please. We are also growing the project, and we have a number of other companies that will join. And as you can see, we're focusing on QSR, which is the quick service industry or fast food, you know, McDonald's and those sorts. McDonald's is not a partner, I should be clear, but those types of restaurants, as well as hospitality, which is mostly hotels and others. And we will be getting them together. We may also be creating a working group for consumer awareness, because as you saw with Maximo, that is so important, as we all know. Next slide, please. And then, as I mentioned, we will be doing other products with these whole chain projects: beef, yogurt, seafood, and produce. Oh, and then the last one, yeah, is low waste events. So much waste happens at these big conferences and weddings and big events that we're specifically looking at that and trying to find ways to maybe change the contract or change some of the practices to lead to less waste during events. And that, I think, is all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana, for your very interesting and then very impactful data to show how these two initiatives with the active participation of the private sector and the partnership between the public sector can yield very good results, and it's really have significant impact. And the target, measure, and act are the real key to the success of this. So, any questions from the floor? Any questions? So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you're going to reach out to encourage more private sector to join the events. And as you said, consumers awareness is very important. So you're going to create a working group on that. And how are you going to plan to do on that aspect?
Yes, for reaching more companies, it's actually we've been very fortunate. We have several companies that have come to us to ask about the project. The other, so that's one way. Another is we host events where we think more companies will be, and we invite them to come learn about the project. And we don't tell them, we ask the other, you know, their peer companies to come and talk about it, so they can see like, oh, well, Walmart and Kroger are doing it, so maybe we should do it too. So we do that. And then we also we just had our first association member join. That is a group, you know, they represent a group of companies. And so we are looking at, can we work with existing associations of companies and not have to be one, you know, everything one-to-one. So that's how we plan to expand. And then your question about consumer awareness.
Working.
Yeah. I think that's very new. We have not even launched the consumer awareness working group, but the hope is that all of these companies, they have a lot of consumer attention, whether people are in their stores or in their restaurants, or they're looking at their products and the packaging. And so our hope is that we can get them, if they are interested to educate consumers, we can have them all do the same campaign. And if we can develop a campaign, and not just refed, but a larger group can develop a campaign, then they can use it and they will see it in all the stores and restaurants and they'll see the same campaign. That's one of our hopes. The other is there may be a way, if we have packaging innovations, that some of the manufacturing brands would actually use new packaging to really help reduce waste. Or in the stores, the types of promotions that they do, they will consider the waste implications in the home and maybe do things differently. So it may be changes within their own business, or it may be more carrying advertising.
Thank you, Dana, because the time limits, we'll end the discussion here. And thanks for Dana. Let's give a big hand to her to stay with us so late. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, 15 minutes behind schedule, so I'll return to them.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zhang. Now we are going to have a very short break for 10 minutes. And we also prepare coffee, tea, and some dessert at the back of this ballroom. So just take a break for 10 minutes. Thank you.